Good evening, everyone. This is the Black Post. This evening, the message will be sent. No matter if you hate it, no matter if you love it, the message will be sent. This evening, let's discuss how Black people, African Americans, are demonized as monsters. But let's also get into the creation of this monster that is now rebelling against the oppression of white supremacy, race soldiers, white domestic terrorists, and racism. As human beings, we naturally evaluate everything we come in contact with. We especially try to gain insight and direction from our elevations of other people. Stereotypes are our cognitive structures that contain the perceived knowledge, beliefs, and expectation about human groups. These cognitive constructs are often created out of a kernel of truth and then distorted beyond reality. Racial stereotypes are constructed beliefs that all members of the same race, share given characteristics, those stereotypes. These attributed characteristics are usually negative. Now, starting off with the one and only Sambo. One of the most enduring stereotypes in American history is that of the Sambo, the coon, the sellout. This persuasive image of a simple-minded, docile Black man dates back at least as far as the colonization of America. See, the Sambo stereotype flourished during the reign of slavery in the United States. In fact, the notion of the happy slave is a core of the Sambo characteristics or the character itself. White slave owners modeled African-American males as a whole into the image of a jolly, overgrown, buck-breaking child who was happy to serve his master. Now, we still have those guys today, don't we? However, the Sambo was seen as naturally lazy and therefore reliant upon his master for the direction. One of the most common things that we get wrong, ladies and gentlemen, is that in the book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, we used to use the term Uncle Tom, meaning that of a coon, meaning that of a sellout. But what they don't understand that if you read the book, Sambo was a sellout. Sambo was the coon. See, in this way, the institution of slavery was justified, that the Sambo was seen as naturally lazy. Let me move on, because we understand that although the Sambo was born out of defense for slavery, it extended far beyond these bounds. It is essentially to realize that the vast scope of these stereotypes, according to the Sambo, it was transmitted through music titles, lyrics, folk stands, literature, children's stories, games, postcards, mail, restaurant names, and menus, and thousands of artifacts. White women, men, and children across the country embrace the image of the fat, wide-eyed, grinning Black man. Yes, master, I'll do it real good for you. Yeah. It was perpetuated over and over, shaping enduring attitudes toward African Americans for centuries. In fact, a stereotype may be so consistently and authoritatively transmitted in each generation from parent to child that it seems almost biological fact. It seems as though it was downloaded into our very being, that is essentially a part of our DNA. That's the Sambo. That's the Sambo. We need to get away from the Sambos. We need to be more like Uncle Tom's if you read the book. Uncle Tom is the one who shared his cotton weight with other slaves who have been light in their particular serving and weight. They're serving in weight of the amount of cotton, the amount of sugar, the amount of tobacco they supposed to go ahead and pick for good old massa. Turn away from Sambo. Turn away from being a coon. A lot of you don't even know that you are a Sambo. Let me tell you one indication when I see a Sambo that I know you're a Sambo is when I hear you talking about African Americans and Black people in a derogatory manner in front of your master, in front of your slave owner, in front of your plantation, cotton picking, sugar eating master. When you put down Black people in front of white people, you are in support of white supremacy. You are in support of white supremacy. You are a Black racist against your own. You may not agree. That's okay. Give it a thumbs down. But if you know it to be the truth, go ahead and give it a thumbs up because you know what I'm saying. I don't care if you talk bad about Black people with Black people. That is okay. We are not perfect. But when you perpetuate the stereotypes, you become a Sambo instantaneously. Yes, you do. Jim Crow. Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that enforced racial segregation in the southern United States. That doesn't mean that it didn't exist in the North because slavery still exists in the North, regardless of Jim Crow laws in the South. See, they also call them Black codes. There were strict local and state laws that detail when, where, and how formerly enslaved people could work, formerly enslaved Black people could work, and for how much compensation. The codes appeared throughout the South as a legal way to put Black citizens, Black people, into indentured servitude, another form of slavery, to take voting rights away, to control where they live, whether it be redlining or the Highway Act of 1956, or the Homestead Act, to control where they live and how they traveled, and to seize children for labor purposes. One of the safe way our people used to travel back in the day was the Negro Motorist, also known as the Green Book. See, the legal system was stacked against Black citizens with former Confederate soldiers working as police, working as slave catchers and judges, making it difficult for African Americans to win court cases and ensuring they were subject to Black codes. Now, a lot of these Black codes were not written down. A lot of these Black codes wasn't written in law, but they absolutely were. As I glance here with Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth, and I just searched through it very vaguely, I can give you some Jim Crow laws that you may not be aware of, that may still be in existence of today. Now, some of you are saying that was hundreds of years ago. But if you look like I look, if you talk like I talk, if you think like I think, then you know that some of these laws still exist. Now, in 1818, the Connecticut voting law disenfranchised Black voters. In 1821, District of Columbia registration law required Blacks to register annually and post bond. The Ohio Anti-Mobility Law of 1804 enacted Black laws that restricted Black movement. See, they would tell you they want you to go back home to a home you never knew. In Africa, that's still a viable option today. Africa is very beautiful, and a lot of countries are very safe. You should actually look into it. But if you're sold into living in white supremacy, then you need to be cautious. You need to be careful. See, the Act of 1844 of Maryland occupation excluded Blacks from the carpentry trade. These are by law. You can look these up. Again, I want to give you that one more time because we understand if we don't know how to be a carpenter, we don't know how to build a house. The Act of 1844, Maryland Occupation Act, excluded blacks from the carpentry trade. Look it up. See, violence was on the rise, making danger a regular aspect of African-American life. Black schools were vandalized, burned, broken down, and destroyed. And band of violent white people attacked, tortured, and lynched black citizens in the night. Families were attacked and forced off their land all across the South. We're not even talking about 1919, aka the Red Summer. See, a lot of you are familiar with Black Wall Street, 1921, Tulsa, Oklahoma, the first time that bombs rained down on any American city. Now, those bombs were rained down by American citizens on top of American Black citizens. You guys would like to forget that. If you're not familiar with Red Summer, where World War I vets had to get on the rooftops of black homes. Now, black World War I vets had to shoot white people before they destroyed and killed our people. The most ruthless organization of the Jim Crow era was no other than the Ku Klux Klan. They were born in 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee, as a private club for Confederate veterans. So these guys were already war-bound. The KKK grew into a secret society, terrorizing black communities and seeping through white Southern culture, with members at the highest level of government and in the lowest echelons of criminal back alleys. These were thugs. These were gangs. These were monsters. And as you understand that the Jim Crow laws expanded at the start of the 1880s, back in cities in South were now wholly beholden to Jim Crow laws, and Black Americans found more freedom in them. This led to substantial Black population moving to the cities, and as the decades progressed, white city dwellers demanded more laws to limit opportunities for African Americans. We live in a system of white supremacy because not just the KKK, not just the government, but the everyday citizen demanded laws to limit opportunities for African Americans. Jim Crow laws soon spread across the country, with every more force than previously. Public parks were forbidden for African Americans to enter, and theaters and restaurants were even segregated. You don't understand the extent of the monster you made, America. Segregated waiting rooms and buses and trains and stations were required. Even water fountains, restrooms, building entrances, elevators, cemeteries, even amusement parks. Even amusement park cashier windows. The law forbade African Americans from living in white neighborhoods. Segregation was enforced for public pools, phone booths, hospitals, asylums, jails, prisons, residential homes for elderly, and the handicapped. Everything was separated. Everything was segregated. Education was segregated. Some states required separate textbooks for blacks and white students. New Orleans, in fact, mandated the segregation of prostitutes according to race. See, in Atlanta, African Americans in court were given a different Bible from white people to swear on. One Jesus, different races. Marriage and cohabitation between whites and black people was strictly forbidden in most southern states and in some northern states too. It was not uncommon to see signs posted at town and city limits warning African Americans that they were not welcome. They could not enter. What we need to understand is following World War I, the NAACP noted that lynchings had become so prevalent that it sent an investigator. And if you go watch the video I did about 25 influential African Americans, black people, this person right here was very significant. They sent investigator Walter White to the South. See, white had lighter skin and could infiltrate white hate groups. As lynchings increased, so did race riots, with at least 25 across the United States over several months in 1919. Again, at least 25 across the United States over several months in 1919, a period sometimes referred to as Red Summer. In retaliation, white authorities charged black communities with conspiring to conquer white America. You enslave us, you Jim Crow us, now we are the terrorists, conspiring to conquer white America in a system of white supremacy. We are the monsters you made. With Jim Crow dominating the landscape, education increasingly under attack, and few opportunities of our people, few opportunities of black people, and especially for black college graduates, the Great Migration of the 1920s saw a significant migration of educated black people out of the South, which encouraged black Americans to move north. Now we take a page out of Harriet Tubman's book. A lot of us not only went north, we went north to Canada. The poverty of the Great Depression only deepened resentment with a rise in lynchings. And after World War II, even black veterans returning home met with segregation and violence. It doesn't matter if you're a veteran or not, they still hate your ass the same. They still killed your ass the same. You fought for a country for your freedom. They use your black body. They use your black back so they can join the Union with the Confederates to have these United States of America, and you were still lynched. You were still burned. You were still killed. The North was not immune to Jim Crow laws. Some states require black people to own property before they could vote. You had to own property before you can vote. Schools and neighborhoods were segregated in the North as well, and businesses that played whites only. What we need to understand is that the stereotyping of African Americans were brought to the theatrical stage with advent of the blackface minstrel show. They made fun of us right in front of us. We're savages. Beginning in the early 19th century, white performers darkened their face with burnt cork, painted grotesquely exaggerated white mouths over their own, donned woolly black wigs, and took the stage to entertain society. The character they created was Jim Crow. This city dandy was the northern counterpart to the southern plantation darky, aka the Sambo. You fucking sellouts. Yeah, you heard me. You fucking sellouts. We need to understand that the performer T.D. Rice is the acknowledged originator of the American blackface minstrel show. His inspiration for the famous minstrel dance and comedy routine was an old crippled black man dressed in rags whom he saw dancing in the streets, buck dancing, tootie pooting, bussing it. During that time, a law prohibited African Americans from dancing because it was said to be crossing your feet against the Lord. Black people were prohibited to dance because crossing your feet was against the Lord. As an accommodation to this law, African Americans developed a shuffle dance in which their feet never left the ground. The physical impaired man Rice saw dancing in this way became the prototype for the early minstrels. White actors throughout the North began performing the Jim Crow. Into the theater was found a cram for Penta Doom. This popularity continued, ladies and gentlemen, at the height of the minstrel era, the decades preceding the following the Civil War. There were at least 34-time blackface minstrel companies performing across the nation. They made this a business to make fun of us. buck dancing, big lips, big pink lips, blackface. See, Jim Crow became the image of the black man in the mind of white Western world and the world of white supremacy. This image was even more powerful in the North and West because many people never had come in contact with African American individuals because they were mainly in the South, in slavery, on plantations. Now, it has been argued that the minstrel clown has been the most persistent and influential image of blacks in American history. Words from the folk song Jim Crow further demonstrated the transmission of this stereotype of African Americans in this society. I'm a full-blooded nigga, OBD real old stock, and my wide head master and my shoulders, I can split a horse block. Well, about turn about and just do every time I will about, I jump. Jim Crow. This is how we sounded. Not because we were illiterate, not because we were ignorant. It's because they did allow us to speak intelligently. They didn't allow us to become educated and have an education. We're the savages. We're the monster you made, America. Movies were and still are powerful medium for the transmission of stereotypes. It doesn't matter which show you're watching. I'm watching Shameless right now. And it's a family of distorted whites and one black kid and one black female. Now, in that show, in some of the early seasons, the black females with the white male. There is no strong black male in the picture. In the show, every black male in the show primarily was derogatory. The black football player was going to throw one of the family members of the Gallaghers out of the window because he couldn't cheat on his test for him. He couldn't do his test for him. Another black male was with a white woman, and the only thing he did was beat her ass. In the black child, in some of the earliest seasons, most episodes, he didn't even say a word. Early movies that you guys probably never seen, The Wooing Wedding of a Coon, The Slave, the Sambo series, and The Nigger, these are shows that America had, offered existing stereotypes through a fascinating new medium, new imagery, new presentation to perpetuate, to reinforce, to instill stereotypes. See, the premiere of Birth of a Nation during the Reconstruction period in 1915 marked a change in emphasis from the happy Sambo and the pretentious and inept Jim Crow stereotypes to that of the savage. See, what I don't understand is in the system of white supremacy, they can go around conquering the world. They can go around killing people. They can go around stealing land. They can go around and colonize people. Everything that the Western world have obtained, have gained was through them being savages. They never negotiated contracts on a business deal. They have always taken what they wanted. It started in Europe. It started in the Middle East. I'm calling it as I see it. We know some of these countries. Great Britain, France. I'm just going to name all the Middle East. They were a major part of the slave trade. Belgium, the Dutch, some Germans. You got to know this, family. You have to know why we are the way we are. This is why we are the way we are. If you corner a scared animal in a corner. If you oppress a people for hundreds of years, you're never going to expect them to rise up and fight? Fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. This is the monster you have made. See, the Ku Klux Klan tames a terrifying, savage African American through lynchings, burnings, torture. And this is all following the emancipation, of course. The image of the threatening brute from the dark continent, acts of racial violence were justified and encouraged through the emphasis of these stereotypes of the savage. Old things about African Americans begin to well up in the face of, the perceived threat, like we're some threat. You outnumber us. It's only now, at that time, it's only 15 million, maybe 20 million of us compared to your hundreds of million, but we was a perceived threat. They believed that we were mentally inferior. Oh, you mean the people who built the pyramids? You mean the people who could actually tell time from the sun, who actually was the first astrologers, the people who actually navigate themselves through wide, vast oceans with the sun and stars at night, or through wind and drift and tides and rifts inside the ocean? We are mentally inferior. I'm speaking a colonizer's tongue. None of us from the African continent, none of us that are of African descent are speaking natural tongue. If you was born and raised in the UK, if you was born and raised in America, 99% of us are not speaking our natural tongue, our tribal tongue, our country's tongue. But most of us, believe it or not, were Sambos at one point in time, because we grew up in the system of white supremacy, and we was in support of white supremacy because we did not know. We wasn't awakened in the new term woke. We was definitely not that. But they believed that we were mentally inferior, physically inferior, and culturally unevolved and ape-like in appearance. See, one of the pictures you see up there, ladies and gentlemen, is around blacks, never relax. If you are around blacks, never relax. And as you can tell in most of these pictures, you see a show of power, but all with the white women. Now, some of you out there are dating white women. Now, I'm not going to get into that. But I'm going to tell you, a lot of your brothers were killed, lynched, dismembered for dating white women, for walking past a white woman, from not crossing the street because a white woman walked down that same street. A lot of these were supported by the prominent white figures like, believe it or not, your so-called savior, Abraham Lincoln, and Andrew Johnson, and Thomas Jefferson. Theodore Roosevelt publicly stated that as a race in the mass, black people all together are inferior to whites. Even in the 9th edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, published in 1800 some damn where, stated authoritatively that African race occupied the lowest position of the evolutionary scale, thus affording the best material for the comparative study of the highest anthropods in the human species. See, this idea of African Americans that are ape-like savages were exceptionally persuasive. I mean, not only did we have the color, but we have stronger physiques, most of us. Now, here's something, family. For example, in 1906, the New York Zoology Park featured an exhibit with an African-American man and a chimpanzee. Several years later, the Ringling Brothers Circus exhibited the Monkey Man. A black man was caged with a female chimpanzee that had been trained to wash clothes and hang them on the line. Now, that brother right there must have been dying and starving, because he was one of the biggest Sambo. But see, other scientific studies were conducted to establish the proper place of African Americans in society. Scientists conducted tests and measurements and concluded that blacks were savages for the following reasons: the abnormal length of the arms, the weight of the brain, 35 ounces, gorillas, 20 ounces, average European, 45 ounces. We had short, flat, stub noses, thick, protruding lips, exceeding the thick cranium, short and black hair, essentially elliptical or almost flat in section, and distinctively woolly. We just have good hair protectors from the sun. That's all that shit is. Our nose are flat so we can breathe in high altitudes close to the equator. Don't let them fool you. So if our brains are only 35 ounces, oh, that's right, we're savages. So you guys' brain is 45 ounces. We're explaining all the inventions that black people actually created and made that white people stole the patents for. Whether it be a design patent or utility patent, explain that. See, in addition to these presumed anatomical differences, African Americans were thought to be far less sensitive to pain than whites. Oh, they have a higher pain threshold. Well, I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitter get knocked the fuck out. I guess pain don't have nothing to do when you're getting knocked out for being a racist. Now, for example, black women were thought to experience little pain with childbirth and bear cutting with nearly as much impunity as dogs and rabbits. These stereotypes of the human-like savages were used to rationalize the harsh treatment of slaves during slavery as well as the murder. They thought we had high pain thresholds. That's why they could torture us and murder us, because they're like, they don't really feel it. But see, the oppression of our people following the emancipation, again, your boy, Abraham Lincoln. However, it can be argued that these stereotypes still exist today. You know they do, family. Now, there were 4 stereotypes for female African Americans. You had the mammy, the Aunt Jemima, the sapphire, and the Jezebel. The most enduring of these is the mammies. Those old fat black women that take care of white kids all the time. Now, although this stereotype originated in the South, it eventually permeated in every region of America as well with the Sambo. All these were justifications through no other than slavery. Oh, the mammy. The mammy was a large, independent woman with pitch black skin and shining white teeth. She wore a drab calico dress and hair scarf and lived to serve her master and mistress. The mammy understood the value of the white lifestyle. Oh, Miss Judy Baker, I just want to take care of all your kids and breastfeed them. I'm going to give them this good old strong black milk. But we're animals. We're animals. We're 3/5 of a human. We're second-class citizens. So you want to stick your tit. You want your white child to suck on an animal's titty. The contradictions in these statements right here. We are the world's first people, and we need to reclaim to our glory, either here or in our motherland, Africa. The stereotype suggests that she raised the master's children, oh master, and loved them dearly. This was not only a stereotype, but this was truth, especially in slavery, especially in the Jim Crow era. See, she loved those children sometimes even more than her own, or at least she pretended to be. Her tendency to give advice to her mistress was seen as harmless and humorous. Although she treated whites with respect, the mammy was a tyrant in her own family. She dominated her children and husband, the Sambo with her temper. The image of the mammy as the controller of the African-American male was used as further evidence of his inferiority to whites, because mammy ran everything, even her man. Because mammy was masculine, most of them in her looks and temperament, she was not seen as a sexual being or threat to white women, because most times they were overweight, they were really dark, and they were fat, so they considered to be ugly. These obese women figure with their ample bosom, and behind was kind of like an anti-aphrodisiac to a lot of European standard of beauty. Because she was non-threatening to whites, Mammy was considered great as an old American as apple pie. That's what she was. She was good as old American apple pie. Miss Judy Baker, I'll take care of your kids. And I'll have my Sambo husband go in and jug a jig, bust a move. The Mammy stereotype was presented to the public in literature and movies. Possibly the most outstanding example is the Mammy role played by Hattie McDaniel in Gone with the Wind. See, the large number of people whose attitudes were shaped by this portrayal is demonstrated through its phenomenal sales record. Everybody talking about how their best picture was Gone with the Wind, the most racist fucking picture that you can. The movie version remains as one of the biggest box office success in history, and it perpetuated the stereotype of mammies, of Black women who are overweight, who are dark skinned. Now, the stereotype of the Aunt Your Mama evolved out of the mammy image. She differs from the mammy in that her duties were restricted to cooking. Now, we understand that mammies also cook, but this is how they made multiple stereotypes, multiple images about women, about Black, beautiful women, don't matter what shade or color they are. It was through Aunt Jemima, the association of the African-American women with domestic work, especially cooking, became fixed in the minds of society. As a result, hundreds of Aunt Jemima collectibles found their way into American kitchens. These Black collectibles, including grocery list holders, salt and pepper shakers, spoon holders, stovetop sets, flour scoops, spatulas, mixing bowls, match holders, teapot, hot pad holders, and much, much, much more. And granted, we as a people perpetuated the stereotype of Aunt Jemima by buying some of this bullshit, by even buying Aunt Jemima syrup, because we thought we were supporting a Black woman, which we were not. They used that picture. They used that imagery. They used those symbols to perpetuate a stereotype. See, Aunt Jemima, most famous image in the pancake advertisement campaign, we know. As a name for this new self-rising pancake mix, because it just naturally made me think of good cooking. Obviously, others agree because the campaign was an instant success. Because the one thing that white people knew, regardless of the time, that Black people can cook their ass off. And if you put a Black face on something, it sells just like Stubbs barbecue. Ooh, you want the original, want the sweet and spicy. This character developed a loyal following of both Blacks and whites. Aunt Jemima had become a reality in your kitchen. Her face still can be found on the pancake box today. But thank you very much, America. You realized that your ass was racist. So now you tooken off Aunt Jemima. These and we are the monsters you made. What about the sapphire? Sapphire was a stereotype solidified through the hit show Amos and Andy. This profoundly popular series began on the radio back in the 1926, sometime back there. This cartoon depicted that the Sapphire character as a bossy, headstrong woman who was engaged in an ongoing verbal battle with her husband. This is where you get that angry Black woman thing from. See, Sapphire possessed the emotional makeup of the mammy and the Aunt Jemima combined. If you notice throughout the years, they just compounded and tacked on and added up all of these stereotypes. Aunt Jemima, mammy, Sapphire, but she dominated. Sapphire dominated her foolish husband, Have you noticed that Black men are always at the blunt, always at the end, that we're always the weaklings in these stereotypes, that we're always dominated? Now, we understand back in slavery that white men were sleeping with Black men as well. Now, let me take that back because that's not the proper usage. They were fucking raping us. They were raping our ancestors in slavery. And now, after that, our black women are dominating us because we were foolish. She dominated her foolish husbands by emasculating him with verbal put downs. My beautiful black sisters, don't put your man down. If he cheats on you and beats you, just fucking leave him. Don't put him down. You are perpetuating a stereotype. Her outrageous hand on the hip, finger pointing style helped carry the show through 4,000 episodes before it was terminated due to its negative racial content. Still to this day, some of our black, beautiful, intelligent sisters still verbally put our black brothers down for whatever reason, don't matter. And you still got your hand on your hip and you still are wagging your finger. Do you know that you are solely portraying the stereotype of a sapphire, or what white people put in your head and mentally implanted in your subconscious for you to act a damn fool against your own kind? But it gets worse. Good old Jezebel. Oh, yeah, she's the hoe. She's the slut. She's the one giving it all up. The final female stereotype in Jezebel, also known as the harlot, or AKA the bad black girl, represented the undeniable sexual side of African-American women. See, the Jezebel most likely was a light-skinned, light brown skin, slender, mixed girl, mulatto girl with long straight hair and small features. See, what they do is the closer you get to white, the closer you get to right. The closer you get to brown, the closer you get to wrong, the closer you get to dark, the closer you get to savage. Because we understand that the Jezebel, the way they portray the stereotype is that they are more closely resemble the European ideal for beauty than any pre-existing images, whereas the Mammy and Shamama and Sapphire were decidedly asexual images, not sexual at all. This stereotype was immensely attractive to who? White males. So sisters, I'm not getting into your relationship choices, but understand why Caucasian, European, white males are attracted to you, because they think you're going to give up that wop, that wet ass pussy faster and quicker than a white woman would. This is the stereotype. I'm not saying this is true. Don't take these words out of the context. This is for enlightenment. The creation of the hypersexual seductress Jezebel served to absolve white males of responsibility in the sexual abuse and rape of the Afro-American women. Black women in such cases were said to be asking for it. You ladies were asking for it. Well, we need to understand that stereotypes today, although much has changed since the day of the Sambo, Jim Crow, the Savage, the Mammy, the Aunt Jemima, the Sapphire, and the Jezebel, it can be argued convincingly that similar stereotypes of African American exists in today. See, there should be little doubt that aspects of Sambo live on the white mounds and show through the crevices of American culture in subtle and sophisticated ways. However, the predominant modern stereotypes are violent, brutish, savage African-American males, over masculinity, feminism, and sexualism, all the isms you can put out there. That African-American men are lazy. Oh, we weren't lazy when we was working for free, were we? When our ancestors were working for free, we wasn't fucking, yeah. We wasn't lazy then, but we're lazy now. And the reason why they believe us and our women are lazy is because of a thing called government support, a thing called welfare, a thing called WIC. You want to know who destroyed the black family in America? I'm going to give you two things. I'm going to give you two things that destroyed the African-American family in this country. Two things: white supremacy and desegregation. Do you know during the time of segregation, there were more males in the home than when we started to segregate in segregation? Did you know that? When they started to desegregate was the fall of the Black family. And they started mass incarceration. Joe Biden, 1994 crime bill, holla at your boy. But see, recent research has shown that whites are likely to hold these stereotypes, especially with respect to issues of crime and welfare. Now, as political and legislative decisions still are controlled by white males, they're controlled by white males, Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, 1994 crime bill. These negative biases are often expressed through policy formation. This is an obvious trend in society to discriminate against, deny, and access to social institutions to African Americans. You know this to be true, family. You know this to be true. See, I don't want you guys to be Sambos, Aunt Chamamas, Jezebels, hoes, sluts, popping it up for zaddy, buck dancing, sellouts, coons. It's essential to provide people. It is essential to provide people with information that challenges stereotypes, because the media's portrayal, entertainment's portrayal, unfortunately, some entertainers actually perpetuate these stereotypes, but the media and entertainment industry portrayal of African Americans has still been and still is conducive to the formation of stereotypes. Intervention in this area are a good place to start. This is where we need to start to bring down some of these strongholds when it comes to stereotypes. Not only for white supremacy, not only for ourselves, but for the enlightenment and elevation of our people throughout the world. This doesn't just include America, ladies and gentlemen. This includes the UK. This includes the Caribbean. This includes Africa. The reevaluation of the content of televised commercials, magazine, advertisement, movies, plays, cultural events, museum exhibits. They got a fucking pair of Jordans in the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. A pair of Jordans as part of African American culture and history. Stop it. It's a pair of tennis shoes. Another media reveals where African Americans representation need to be increased. It's funny how we don't have positive representation of a race of people that actually built this country. Yeah, we the descendants, but we can take credit for our people building this country and the inventions that they have inputted. Because at the end of the day, this country solely became rich off of free labor, off the backs of blacks. We either be in slavery or Jim Crow. You know we wasn't getting paid the same wages as a white counterpart. You know that, right? They didn't consider us human. We wasn't considered a citizen. They like to say, oh, second-class citizen. Nah. Fuck all that. We are simply residents of this country. The Constitution was never made for us. Let me tell you this, family. There is nothing wrong with the image of the African-American athlete, as I spoke about the shoes, you know. However, it is portrayal of this image as the exclusion of other positive images leads to stereotyping. Let me tell you this, family. Educating people about damaging, inaccurate stereotypes is recommended. Small focus groups involving individuals of different races could be organized through agencies, schools, universities, and churches. Discussions of racial stereotypes and attitudes in a safe format would allow people to explore and possibly discard stereotypes. Not all, not everybody, but few. See, it's amazing how we have to teach them about us, and they never have to teach us about them because we grew up in their country that they stole from the Native Americans, that essentially we discovered even before the Native Americans, but that's another story because the Moors were even here prior to the Native Americans. But we won't get into that today. But we grew up in a system of white supremacy. As Neely Fuller said, there are three types of people in the known universe: white people, non-white people, and white supremacists. That is what we need to understand. See, discussion of our racial stereotypes and attitudes in a safe format would allow people to explore and discard stereotypes, as I said. But individuals can reassess their own prejudice and biases and effect on a change within themselves through a non-judgmental process of exploration. Maybe the possibility that people who believe and perpetuate stereotypes do so not out of their hate, but as a means of protecting themselves, but be considered. But let me tell you this. You can't talk to a white supremacist and try to convince them of anything. Usually, those stereotypes are ingrained in them as children, and they grow up to be not only a white supremacist, not only a racist, but a white domestic terrorist and a race soldier. They may do so out of ignorance, a lot of the stereotypes, bullshit. Habit or fear rather than maliciously. See, by suspending our disbelief and seeing each person as an individual rather than through the eyes of a preconceived stereotype, because a lot of them are, we can begin this change. Some of them can be transformed. Some of them can be convinced. Some of them can see a different side. Not all, but we can change it on an individual level. Now, as a result, resolution on the community and societal levels can occur. That is what we need to understand, family. That is what we need to understand. So hopefully you understand. Hopefully you understand that the way we are, and some of you may say this is an excuse, but let me tell you, these are very valid facts that America, we are the monsters you made. This is the Black Post. The message was sent, regardless how you received it. You received it, and the message was delivered. Have a great night, everyone. Be one, Black Power. I'm out.